Before I start my story, please support the channel by subscribing and liking the video and turn on post notifications. God bless you. My name is Craig Nolan, and I want to share the story of how I died on the operating table and saw something that changed my life forever. It happened during an emergency operation to remove my appendix. What I experienced on that day opened my eyes to the reality of heaven and the deep love that God has for each of us. I hope my story will encourage you and remind you that we are here for a greater purpose. I believe, as I often say, I think that's why we're created, to spread God's love. I was never the type of person to worry too much about my health. I always thought I was strong, able to handle anything life threw at me. But one evening, I felt a sharp pain in my lower right side. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a cramp or something I ate. As the night went on, the pain got worse. It became so intense that I could hardly stand or walk without feeling like I was being stabbed. I finally decided to go to the hospital. The doctors did some quick tests and scans, and they told me my appendix was inflamed and could burst at any moment. It all happened so fast. 1 minute, I was in the waiting room trying to breathe through the pain. The next minute, they were rushing me to the operating room. The doctors said they needed to remove my appendix right away, or it could be life-threatening. I remember lying on the operating table, staring at the bright lights above me. Nurses moved around me, preparing tools and adjusting monitors. The anesthesiologist leaned over, telling me to count backward from 10. My heart was racing and I felt sweat on my forehead. I tried to pray, but I was so scared that my words got stuck in my throat. All I could say was, "Lord, help me." Then everything went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious before it happened, but suddenly I became aware of something strange. I felt myself lifting out of my body as if I was floating above the operating table. I could see the surgeons and nurses working on me. The sight was both shocking and peaceful at the same time. I didn't feel any pain. In fact, I felt lighter than air, free from all worry or fear. Then I noticed someone else in the room, someone who stood out from all the medical staff. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He was dressed in a simple white robe that seemed to glow, yet it didn't hurt my eyes. His face was kind, full of love, and he looked right at me with such warmth that I felt my heart flood with peace. I knew, without a doubt, that this was Jesus. He didn't speak with his mouth, but I heard his voice in my mind, clear and calm. He said, "Craig, do not be afraid. I am with you." I wanted to cry and shout all at once. I couldn't understand why he would be there with me, a simple person who had made so many mistakes. But his gaze told me that I was loved, just as I was. Everything in the operating room faded, and I felt Jesus take me by the hand. A bright light surrounded us, so pure and warm that I never wanted to leave. We moved together through what felt like a tunnel of light, though it wasn't a dark tunnel. It was more like a passage made of pure radiance, pulsing with life and energy. I felt no fear, only an overwhelming sense of love and safety. When we reached the end of this glowing path, the light opened up into a vast, breathtaking landscape. It was more beautiful than anything I had ever imagined. The colors were so vivid, it was as if my earthly eyes had been half blind before. I could hear music in the distance, a heavenly sound that seemed to come from every direction at once. I remember thinking, this must be heaven. Jesus stood beside me, and I sensed that he wanted me to see something important. Far off in the distance, I could make out the outline of a city. Its walls sparkled like jewels, and its gates shone with a brilliance that took my breath away. I felt drawn to it, like a child running toward a long-lost home. I knew, deep in my soul, that this was a city of heaven. As we began to move closer, I noticed that the ground beneath my feet felt soft, like walking on the gentlest grass. Flowers of every color swayed around us, and they seemed to be alive in a way I couldn't explain. The air itself was sweet and filled with the scent of blossoms and fresh rain. I felt so alive, more than I ever had on Earth. In that moment, all my worries, doubts, and fears vanished. My only thought was that I wanted to stay there forever. It felt like everything I had ever searched for in life, peace, love, acceptance, was there in abundance. And at the center of it all was the presence of Jesus, who radiated love like the sun radiates light. But as we approached the city's gates, Jesus paused. He looked at me with compassion, and I sensed that there was more to this journey than just my own joy. He wanted me to understand something deeper about this place and about the purpose God has for each of us. I couldn't speak. I was too overwhelmed by the beauty and holiness that surrounded me. But inside, I felt my heart asking a question. Why me? Why show me this? That is how my journey began. In this first part, I wanted to share how I found myself in heaven's presence, guided by Jesus himself. In the next parts, I will describe what I saw in the city of heaven and the lessons I learned about God's love and plan for us all. My hope is that my story will touch your heart and remind you that we are not alone. God is real, heaven is real, and we have a reason to live that goes far beyond our own understanding. When I left off, I was standing with Jesus at the gates of a shining city. Even from a distance, I could see its beauty. Walls that glowed like precious stones, streets that looked like pure gold, and light so warm and gentle that it felt like a hug for my soul. As I stood there, I realized that every part of me longed to enter. I wanted to see everything, to explore this place that seemed to be the source of all love and peace. Jesus smiled at me as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. Without speaking a word, he led me forward. The gates opened silently, and we stepped inside. What I saw took my breath away. The city was more alive than anything on earth. Every color was brighter, every sound was richer, and even the air seemed to sing with praise. A city filled with life. People moved through the streets, dressed in white garments that shone with a soft glow. Their faces were full of joy and kindness. Some were talking with each other, others were singing, and a few seemed to be praying. I noticed that there was no sadness or pain in their eyes, only a deep, peaceful happiness that I could feel in my own heart. Beautiful buildings rose around us, each one unique, yet all seemed to fit together perfectly. I could sense that nothing in this city was random. Every detail had a purpose, reflecting the glory of God. Flowers bloomed along the pathways, their petals shimmering in colors I had never seen before. The gentle sound of flowing water echoed nearby, and I realized there was a clear river winding through the center of the city. Jesus guided me toward that river. As we walked, I felt a gentle breeze on my face, carrying the sweet scent of blossoms. The air itself seemed full of life, and I felt more awake and alive than ever. I also noticed that even though there were many people around, there was no rush or hurry. Everyone moved with calm assurance, as if they had all the time in the world. A river of light. When we reached the river, I gasped. The water sparkled like liquid crystal, reflecting the light from above. I knelt down and touched it. It felt cool and refreshing, but there was something more. It seemed to carry a healing energy that reached deep into my spirit. I understood then that this was not just water. It was a river of life, flowing from God himself. Jesus stood beside me and spoke softly in my mind. This is where love flows without end. Here no sorrow can remain, and no wound goes unhealed. I felt tears on my cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming peace that washed over me. Music and worship. As we moved along the riverbank, I heard music coming from different corners of the city. It wasn't like any music on earth. Each note carried the essence of worship and praise. I saw groups of angels singing together, their voices blending into a perfect harmony. I also saw people, maybe souls of those who had come before, lifting their hands in worship. Some danced gracefully, their faces shining with devotion. I could feel their joy as if it were my own. It was like a warm wave passing through me, reminding me that all creation was made to honor God. I remembered my life on earth, how often I felt alone or misunderstood. Here, there was no such feeling. Everyone belonged, everyone was loved, and everyone had a special part in this grand celebration. A deeper understanding. We continued walking, and Jesus led me to a place that overlooked the heart of the city. From this vantage point, I saw buildings that seemed endless, streets that stretched far into the distance, and countless souls living in perfect harmony. I realized that heaven was far greater than I could comprehend. It was more than a city. It was a realm of pure, boundless life. I also began to understand something important. Heaven is not just a reward for a good life. It is the place where God's love is fully revealed, where all brokenness is healed, and where every tear is wiped away. I felt a gentle ache in my heart, knowing that so many people on earth do not realize the depth of God's love for them. They live with fear, anger, or emptiness, never knowing that a place like this exists and that God longs for them to be part of it. The purpose of the journey. Suddenly, Jesus turned to me with compassion in his eyes. I sensed that he wanted me to see more, to learn more about my purpose, both in this heavenly realm and back on earth. A wave of warmth filled me, and I felt safe, like a child being guided by a loving parent. In that moment, I remembered my own doubts and struggles, and I realized how small they seemed compared to the vast glory of God's kingdom. Still, a question tugged at my mind. Why am I here now? What is the reason for me to see this? Even though I was filled with wonder, I also felt a growing sense of responsibility. I knew that this journey was not just for me. There was a message I would need to share, a truth about heaven and God's love that the world desperately needed to hear. As if reading my thoughts, Jesus spoke again in my mind. Craig, I brought you here so you can understand. Your life has a purpose beyond what you can see. Many are lost, many are hurting. Go back and tell them of my love. Show them the way home. A glimpse beyond, I wanted to ask a million questions. I wanted to stay in this place forever, but I sensed that this was only part of the journey. There was still more to learn, more to witness. In the next part of my story, I will share how Jesus revealed even deeper wonders of heaven and explain the meaning behind everything I was seeing. Even as I stood in awe, a small part of me felt a gentle pull, as if my time in this holy city was moving toward a moment of decision. I had come so far in understanding God's love, yet I knew there was much more to discover. The city seemed endless, filled with mysteries and treasures beyond my wildest dreams. As I continued my journey in that shining realm, I felt a pull to look deeper into the truth of our future. I was led by the gentle presence of Jesus, and as we moved, I heard his voice echo in my mind, clear and calm. I was reminded of the words from the Bible, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son," John 3:16. That love is the hope I saw shining even in the midst of the coming storm. I looked down upon earth and saw scenes of both beauty and sorrow. I saw the rise and fall of great empires, much like the stories told in Scripture. I remembered the promise in Isaiah 1:18, "Come now, and let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." In that vision, I saw how people once walked in love and truth, but slowly turned away, their hearts hardened by greed and selfishness. Then the vision changed. I saw the present world, a place filled with division and sorrow. People were caught up in their own desires and distractions, much like the warnings in Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and wealth." I witnessed cities in chaos, and I heard the cries of the broken. It was as if the promises of hope and healing were fading under the weight of human neglect. But then, I was shown a glimpse of the future. The scene before me was like a crossroads where two paths lay clear. On one side was a road to destruction, echoing the stark truth of Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death, where darkness and despair would claim many. I saw governments crumble, people turning on one another, and nature suffering under humanity's careless hands. On the other side There was a path of salvation and renewal. It reminded me of the promise in Revelation 21:4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. In this vision, I saw a world where people returned to the love of God. They chose to live by His word, to seek truth and justice, and to treat each other with compassion and care. I saw families reunited, communities healing, and a renewed hope that sparkled like stars in the night sky. I turned to Jesus, overwhelmed by the choice before humanity, and asked, "Is this our destiny? Are we truly free to choose, even if it leads to ruin?" His gaze was both tender and stern as he replied, "The choice is yours, Aaron. As it is written in Deuteronomy 30:19, I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. But remember, the time to choose is short." His words filled me with a mix of sorrow and urgency. I understood then that every soul must decide whether to embrace the light of God's love or to fall into darkness. The future is not fixed, it is shaped by the choices we make every day. I was given a gift in that moment, a clear understanding that our actions matter, that our love for one another and for God can turn the tide. Before the vision began to fade, Jesus extended his hand once more and said, "Tell them what you have seen. Let this message ignite the spark of hope in every heart, so that the light of God may overcome the shadows of this world." I felt a warmth in my heart as his words echoed within me, a call to share this truth with everyone I meet. Then, as quickly as the vision had come, it all dissolved into a blinding light. My consciousness was pulled back, leaving me with the knowledge that our fate is still in our hands. I awoke with a deep sense of purpose, carrying the weight of that revelation in my soul. The angel turned to me, his eyes full of sorrow and hope. "Craig, what you have seen is not set in stone. The fate of humanity hangs in the balance, and every soul plays a part in shaping our future." His words hit me like a heavy weight. As I listened, I felt a pull, as if an unseen force was drawing me away from that beautiful, strange world. The amazing visions began to blur and fade, and the angel's presence slowly disappeared. I wanted to stay, to ask more questions, to learn more, but I knew I had to return. I woke with a gasp, my body trembling and covered in sweat. I was back in the hospital, in a dimly lit room, with the steady beep of the monitors grounding me in reality. A nurse hurried in, her eyes wide with surprise. "You're awake," she whispered. For a moment, I lay there, unable to speak. The weight of what I had seen pressed down on me like a mountain. I had witnessed the promise of heaven, a place filled with endless beauty and love, and also a warning for our future if we do not choose wisely. As I stared at the ceiling, I realized my life would never be the same. I had been given a glimpse of what is possible, a message I could not ignore. This near-death experience was a gift, meant to be shared with the world. In the months that followed, I struggled to find the right words to tell my story. Some people doubted me, saying it was just a hallucination of a man on the brink of death. But those who truly listened could feel the truth in my voice, the truth of God's love, the reality of heaven, and the urgent call to change our ways. The message was clear. Humanity stands at a crossroads. If we continue down the path of greed, hate, and selfishness, the darkness I saw will become our future. But if we choose love, truth, and unity, hope will prevail. Our future is not written in stone. It is shaped by the choices we make every day. I share my story so that you too may choose the light. I have seen heaven and the power of God's love, and I believe that we are all here to spread that love. No matter how hard life gets, there is always hope, and we can always turn back to God. I think that's why we're created, to spread God's love. Those words have guided me ever since. Thank you for listening to my journey. May it inspire you to find the light in your life and share love with everyone you meet.